In Afghanistan, fatal attacks, often carried out by Daesh or Taliban-controlled suicide bombers, are sadly all too common. The security situation has been deteriorating badly in recent years, and journalists in the country are finding themselves ever more at risk. Bilal Sarwari is one of those journalists. He's covered the region for years, and he's now running to become a member of the Afghan parliament for Kunar province. He joins me now from Kabul. Hi, Bilal. Thanks so much for joining us. I mean, I feel like a broken record with you. I've lost count of how many times I've had to ask you the details of these monstrous attacks. The element, I guess, that's different this time, though, is that it seems journalists were the clear target. It is difficult enough to cover Afghanistan. And is there a risk now that the much-needed coverage of what's happening in the country will even become too dangerous for the boldest among us?
I think what you see is unprecedented level of brutality. I think you see little or no disregard for civilians, including members of the media, my own colleagues. But at the same time, there are a lot of questions that one could ask. How is it that this area in the heart of Kabul that houses the most sensitive and strategic installations of the Afghan intelligence service gets attacked time and again? Whose fault is it? What sort of competent leadership or incompetent leadership is the cause of these tragedies? I think you're clearly seeing aerial surveillance in the area, sniffer dogs, increasing level of security, and yet again we see an attack where the first attacker detonated his explosives, passing, we believe, we're being told that there were scanners, sophisticated scanners, put in place with the help of Western and possibly American intelligence agencies like the CIA. So one has to ask a lot of questions. Then it's the issue of reporters doing their job, being the eyes and ears of the people of Afghanistan to the world. They were 300 meters or so away from the site of the area. A number of them were there with cameras and microphones, so quite visible. We heard from the group Daesh saying that they targeted the apostate media, as they call it. But unfortunately, what we see is journalism has many enemies in this country.
Right. And I mean, what does that ultimately mean for Afghanistan when so much fear and intimidation stops journalists from doing the work?
I think Afghans lost a lot of their voices yesterday. These were simply not numbers. These are lives. Families lost their breadwinners, daughters and sons are orphaned, and this is this agony and pain that continues for generations. I think what you see with someone like Sarwari or many of my other colleagues, they were really the eyes of Afghanistan to the world. Someone who started in 2001 or even before that as a driver and worked up his way to be the chief photographer, I think shows you that he was carrying the hopes, aspirations, fears, and concerns of this post-9/11 generation. He wasn't the blue blood. He really earned the respect of his colleagues across the aisle. He had a chance to work outside of Afghanistan. Yet again, he chose to be here.
Okay.
Unfortunately, what we see is this continuous failure in terms of the Afghan government failing to protect its people.
His voice, I mean, what you're saying there, though, first and foremost, is that these voices are being silenced, much to the detriment of the Afghan public that will no longer have strong reporters to expose what's going on, particularly in government. And now it's government that you're looking to enter. And interestingly enough, Bilal, the top of the program, we spoke about Nikol Pashinyan in Armenia, who is also a former journalist, former editor of an opposition newspaper, who is now a major player in Armenia's political landscape. The problem is, there is a question about your compromising your integrity when you enter politics. When you criticize the government so staunchly, as you always have, your viewers now have to wonder if it's actually part of a personal agenda to get you the votes that you want to become a member of parliament. What do you say to that?
I think that's a fair criticism. I think it's a fair concern. But here in Afghanistan, I have stayed in this country like many other young Afghans. I went and studied in the U.S. and this time I want to step up to the plate and serve my people. I think it's time that we pay our dues back. I mean, for me, it's a very personal decision, because what I've seen as an Afghan is that I've contributed to Afghan journalism. I've traveled across the country. I don't think I can really hide my passion and love for this country and people. At the end of the day, I'm an Afghan. And now I want to really see, hopefully, my other young men and women of my generation who will hopefully complete a generational transition of politics and power. I think the intention is not to get rich. The intention is not to get a name. At least on my part, that's my clear intention. My family, my friends really know that. And let's really see. Let's really see how we do with ballots, how we are received by the people. I believe I've traveled Afghanistan over the last 17 years. I've studied in the US. I've traveled the world. I believe I'm in a better position to serve my people. Now, what I do as a member of parliament, I think, is a good question. I think that's for time to tell. I think there will be a lot of transparency, and I think what you will see is a lot of new faces. I think you will see a generational transition, hopefully, because we can't just simply sit here and complain and say, this doesn't work and that doesn't work.
But what about the issue, I'll go back to it, of the public questioning your agenda as what is supposed to be an objective journalist? When you want to run for public office and you use the media as, in a sense, a campaign platform for yourself, at no cost for yourself, I mean, you're actually getting paid to do this work while campaigning. What do you do when the public begins to criticize that?
I think the public can know that as a journalist, I continue to tell what is the truth and only the truth. I have not really campaigned. I went back to my home village. I stood before 500 people or so, and I told them, if you back me, I am at your service. I want to serve you.
But you don't see a conflict of interest in your work?
I've got no... I don't, not now. I think once campaigning starts, that's when I will come out quite transparently. I've got no fear of being outspoken. I've got no fear of being transparent with what I do. Otherwise, I would have not allowed for the pictures to be taken. And many Afghans and many other people across the world actually just came out and said that will be a good choice. Now, I have not actively started campaigning. This is called consulting with your tribes and sub-tribes. It's a very traditional system, which is quite effective. So it was initially a jirga, and let's see that.
Okay.
I really don't see that. What I say on TV and what I tell the world is what I really see it as to be the truth.
Okay, and Bilal, you will let your voters decide. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us on this edition of The Newsmakers. Bilal Sarwari.